As the global AI race is heating up, AI sovereignty is at the top of countries' minds, with many developing their own technologies and governance to stay ahead. France says it's committed to not only creating an environment for cross-country cooperation, but also a way for a shared regulatory framework. Sarah Al-Khaldi was at the ATxSummit, where she spoke with the French minister in charge of this booming tech.
When I look at sovereignty, it's not about closing doors and really like only doing things your own way in-house in your country, but the way we're approaching sovereignty, and actually the reason why the president is here this week, is to build alternatives, to reduce your vulnerabilities. And to reduce your vulnerabilities, you need to be very conscious on your dependencies. And the fact is, over the last 20 years, we've built on dependencies to those big players, big tech players, where we look at cloud, for example. Majority of the cloud infrastructure is built on a few handful companies. When you look at software, when you look at all the tools we need to operate governments, businesses, or our citizens, we're very dependent on some markets. And what the geopolitical context has helped us realize, has globally, I mean the world, is that if we want to reduce our vulnerabilities in times of uncertainty, we need to build new alliances. We need to reinforce those new alliances. And that's why we're here actually in Southeast Asia, because if we build this coalition of countries, if we work together even stronger than before, we can build alternative of like-minded countries to build AI not only for your own borders, but building AI, third way AI in a way that will allow all different countries to have access to options.
With that in mind and the geopolitical tensions that we are seeing between the US and China, how does that impact, the AI landscape as a whole, as well as the partnerships and collaborations that you end up having given the geopolitical environment?
Yeah, France and Singapore always had very strong collaboration, especially when it comes to tech and innovation. I was with Minister Theo yesterday, and our countries have been operating partnerships at different levels. But with the current context, it gives us an opportunity, a window to take the partnership to another level. So we've worked on a joint MOU with Singapore to see, when it comes to innovation, how can we do more together on 3 different points. One, research and universities. How do we collaborate, bringing our universities here? How do we build partnerships to address some of the major concerns, problems we're facing? How do we want to advance AI technologies together with our researchers? 2, companies. We've had a long history of having companies who have been operating here in Singapore, and they can carry with them the whole ecosystem of innovators in AI, so that we reinforce the collaboration between our companies here in Singapore and back in France to work together on addressing some of the major problems that tech can solve. And 3, it's as governments building standards together. So we both have invested quite a lot into building what we call the AI safety institutes. Those institutes are basically making science-based and science evidence on trying to address some of the concerns that AI can bring, trying to understand those models better, address some of the very specific concrete issues like cyber threats, like disinformation. And so combining the power of those 2 institutes is also something we're working on to see how we can, again, collaborate to advance science together rather than being in our own respective lanes.
There are a lot of big names coming out of the US. There's a lot of adoption in Asia. People want to expand, companies want to expand here. And Middle East is investing heavily as well. But when it comes to Europe, there's some hesitation when it comes to regulation and how they can thrive in that environment. How confident are you that, AI can thrive in Europe with these regulations in mind?
So the way we approached regulating AI as Europeans was to say, first and foremost, we need the same standards for 27 countries. Because there's one thing that has slowed us down as Europeans, is if you want to scale technologies, but you have to go through a regulatory framework that is different from one country to another, we are not basically taking advantage of one of the biggest advantage we have as European, is that we're 450 million inhabitants. And this gives us a lot of power. But to unleash this power, we need to have standards that are unified across the 27 markets. If you're in a small business and you're working on a startup and you want to expand out of your country where you started, and you have to go through different regulatory frameworks from one market to another, you don't have the capacity to do that. This is capacity you're not investing into building your technology. So when it came to AI, the very first and foremost decision we've made, which is a good decision, is to say, let's not address it as 27 different countries, but let's address it together. And let's address it in a way that I also think is good, is to say we don't want to regulate the technology per se, we want to regulate how it can be used. Because again, going to safety and trust, if we don't create rules on how AI can be used, and if we don't guarantee the citizens that we control the usage of the technology, then we're going to take the biggest risk, which is it's not going to be adopted. The same way, like when you're developing a drug, you have to assess what is going to be the risk on the population. This is a risk approach we've taken based on the use cases and not the technology per se.